Welcome everyone to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling. Joining me once again, his second appearance, not only on the channel, but on the Sammy Hagar Deep Dive, is the Parish of Rock. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me back. Really looking forward to this. As I said last time, big Sammy Hagar fan. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you definitely check out the episode that we did talking about the Red Voodoo album, and Parish goes into a lot of detail about how he got into Sammy Hagar, which I'm was too young to get into Sammy Hagar in the 70s, but he got into him. He was at the Hammersmith Odeon when Live 1980 was recorded. Yeah, go check that episode. Check all the episodes out, but check that one out.
And get the book. Get the book, everybody. It's a great book.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent.
I did not ask him to do that just then, but yes, we are all tied into my Sammy Hagar Red on Black, the Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar, which is a book form, a deep dive into each of Sammy's solo albums, and we are now up to 2008, and the album that followed, the Living It Up album, is this very strange album cover, Cosmic Universal Fashion. I think that this album cover graphic is a mess. It's just a bunch of words. I mean, there's song titles, but they're upside down. So there's a few random photos here. I'm assuming that's a photo of Sammy with the John Lennon shirt on, but I don't know. There's some photos in here. Now, this is the type of thing that drives me insane. For album credits, go to redrocker.com/CUF, Cosmic Universal Fashion /credits. I remember getting this and going onto the website, and because I'm in Canada, guess what? I can't view it. Now, if I wanted to read the credits online, I would have bought the album digitally. If I buy the physical album, I want the credits in the album. Yeah. I just think this is a mess of just a terrible mess of a design.
Well, which is even more annoying when you know that there's so many different artists on different tracks. It's not like it's the band just playing all the songs. There's so many different people. You want to know who's on the album.
I don't know if without looking, I don't know if it's in this chapter. It might be in this chapter where I basically say it shouldn't be easier to read the credits on Wikipedia than on the actual album.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I mean, this is the late 2000s. This is just before the vinyl, sort of rebirth. I think this is all, other than digital, this is the only form this came out in. There was no cassette of this. And as far as I know, there's still no vinyl of it. I would hope that a reissue would fix this. It's the only album that Sammy did for Roadrunner Records. So it's kind of a one-off. And even though it's only credited to Sammy Hagar, it's essentially a Wabaritas album because that's who he's got playing on it as the main band. But as Parish said, there are a ton of guest stars on this album. Now, that doesn't mean all of this complaining. That doesn't mean that I necessarily think it's a bad album. I just think that it's kind of a mystery. And one of the mysteries about this, and I know we've talked about this band off camera, this is only out a few months before Chickenfoot, the first Chickenfoot album came out. So this album kind of just came and went.
Yeah.
Did you what was your memory of this album coming out?
Well, I mean, unlike you, I'm actually a big fan of Living It Up. I really like that album. Maybe because I got it when I was on holiday in the Mediterranean with my family, and I've got lots of good memories of sort of playing it by the, on headphones by the pool and in the hire car, etc. And the kids singing along to it. And because I was on holiday, it's kind of like it's a beach album, isn't it? So it's a holiday album. So
that makes total sense.
So I've got a real warm spot for that album. And then what comes next is Chickenfoot, and I'm a huge Chickenfoot album. Fan rather. I really like Chickenfoot. I saw them live when they came over with the second album that's called Chickenfoot 3.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of sandwiched between two albums that I really like. I suppose overall at the time, I liked the album at the time actually, but it is to me it's eclipsed by Chickenfoot, which, as you've just said, came out pretty quickly afterwards. So, and I suppose in the 2000s that was really unusual. If that had happened back in the 70s or the 80s, you wouldn't have thought twice about it.
Like you were, we were getting used to these long extended periods between albums. And to his credit, Sammy never really did that. He'd have something out.
Well, I think on average, if you take his albums, his collaborations, Van Halen, he must have released an album every 2 years. Because he's
2 or 3. Yeah, I mean, so 2000 he had 10, 13.
But on average, he's over a 50-year period, he's done about 25, 26 albums, hasn't he? With all the various people he's been. So as an average, he must have done an album every 2 years of some type or other. So
that's one of the reasons I did this book, because I don't think people realize just how many albums he's contributed to. It's quite a bit. But this one kind of got lost in the shuffle.
So this was quite quick after Living It Up, 2 years, I think, afterwards. And then Chickenfoot, I think, came out in the same year. So it's kind of got squashed and for me, kind of forgotten about, because if I go back to the record collection, I'll go and listen to Living It Up quite a lot, and I'll definitely go and listen to Chickenfoot. I never go back to this. And in fact, I was saying before we came on, I couldn't even find my copy of it. It's up in the loft somewhere. And I probably has, We moved here in 2010, and I certainly haven't listened to it since then, because it's been up in the loft. So, I think it's got squeezed for me. So it's been really interesting going back and listening to it now. And actually, a lot of the songs were quite fresh. I don't actually remember many of the songs from the time actually. So coming back now, it was almost like a new album.
Yeah. I just looked, in the book, because I use approximate dates, but according to my research, this album came out in November of 2008, and the Chickenfoot album came out in June of 2009. So within like pretty much
6
half
months.
a year, not only do we have a new, something new with Sammy Hagar on, it's a new band, it's a whole new approach. So this album he put it out, and I will say, we'll get into the songs. The first track, which is the title song, Cosmic Universal Fashion, it got a little bit of notoriety simply because of the video. Because the video was sort of not a sequel, but it sort of played on the fact that the song has a repeated motif of Right Now. So it kind of harkens to the classic Van Halen Right Now video. Of course, you've got... I think this is the first Sammy album that Michael Anthony.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, which was great. I remember it was great to see those two playing together again, because I think they were always buddies, and I think that it was very awkward for Mike when Sammy was out of Van Halen, because I think the brothers kind of looked at him and said, you got to choose, right? And eventually, of course, Mike chose to be with someone who was going to be active and out on the road all the time. But but the first, it's kind of got it's a little modern sounding. Now, he co-wrote this song, and I'll never remember the name. And as I already said, I can't find such information inside the actual CD. This song was written by Sammy, Stephen Lost, and David Kahn. And it also appeared on an album called Baghdad Heavy Metal, which was a combination of Western and, Middle Eastern artists collaborating. So it does have a very different feel to it. I quite like it. It doesn't sound anything like the song Right Now. It's just they did the video to sort of pay homage to that. But what are your thoughts on this song?
I think it starts the album really well, actually. It's quite funky. It's interesting you're saying that it was previously on a collaboration of two different musical styles, because that probably explains why it's got that kind of funky feel to it. I think it's got a great chorus. The chorus is actually reminds me of the Red Hot Chili Peppers a bit, which is interesting, bearing in mind what comes next.
Yeah, that's right.
What comes with the Chickenfoot. So
I don't have Chad Smith on this, but
yeah. So who knows whether that is purely coincidence. So yeah, I think it starts the album pretty well. I mean, what a weird title for the song, and what a weird title for the album, for that matter. But yeah, I think it kicks off really well.
Yeah, but despite it being a weird title, it's somehow it sings well.
Yeah, it does.
It becomes a hook.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next up is one of two songs on the album that are right in a row, co-written with Neil Sean. I mean, Sammy and Neil have collaborated many times, but this song, Psycho Vertigo, again, this song very much reminds me not only of Chickenfoot, but a particular Chickenfoot song. It reminds me of So Long Rope from the debut, because the riff comes, it stops, Sammy sings, then the riff comes in, then stops, Sammy sings. Like, it very much sounds like I said, we're within a few months of Chickenfoot happening. So it's just interesting how you kind of get a little preview of that here.
Well, you've got Michael Anthony on bass, so that you've got that. You've got what's his name? Well, you've got Neil Sean, as you said, on guitar, but you've also got Dean Castronovo on drums, and I think the drums is really good on this. I think the song really rocks. Yeah, I wrote down proto Chickenfoot. It was definitely getting into the zone and into the vibe on this album for what was going to come next. And I guess when I heard the album, I would have known that, but going back to it now and liking Chickenfoot, this album actually kind of appeals to me a bit more, I think, because of that. So yeah, I think it's a good song. I think it's it's fun. Again, a weird title and a bit of an odd lyrics, but as a song, it's a good song, I think.
Yeah, very good. Another song co-written with Neil is Peephole. This song was actually, so there was supposed to be a band called Planet Us, which featured Neil and Dean from Journey, and then Sammy and Mike. That didn't happen. So I guess Planet Us kind of morphed into Soul Circus with Jeff Scott Soto. And this song was actually recorded on that album. So there's another version of the song of that Neil and Dean are on. But I wrote this in my book, Peephole. This might be the heaviest song Sammy ever had anything to do with. Like, this is a relentless song.
It's certainly one of his weirdest.
It's very weird, but it's heavy. It's
weird lyrics, weird theme, quite dark in its tone. It's quite a sexual song, but not in a way that's glorifying it in any way. It's very dark, but you're right. It's very heavy. I like the drumming. So it's exactly the same team that played on the previous song that we mentioned. So Mike Anthony, Dean Castronovo. I mean, I never knew that they nearly formed a band, the four of them. So I guess these are the leftovers that he brought to this album. But yeah, I like it. I think it's good. And again, it's got a bit of a Chickenfoot feel to it. It's got that vibe to me, not lyrically, but certainly musically. So yeah, again, I think another decent song.
Yeah, lyrically, it reminds you of, watching like a true crime documentary about them finding, bodies in somebody's basement. Like, it's pretty twisted lyrically, but very good. Yeah, I wrote, why didn't this band Planet Us get off the ground? This would have been like 2003, and I said, well, Sammy and Mike had a better paying offer put on the table, which was to reunite with Van Halen, short-lived as it was. So that next
and I guess I don't know what Neil Sean was doing with Journey at the time either.
I think Journey was they'd done one album with Steve Jerry, Arrival, and then they did I always get this mixed up. The Journey EP is called Red 13. I always get that mixed up with Sammy's 1013, and it's got Red in the title, but that's not Sammy, it's Journey.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 2005 that they put out Generation. So Journey were probably at kind of they weren't really active, on a break or whatever it was. But whatever it is, it didn't get off the ground. But yeah, there was definitely, these were when these things kind of happen, it kind of shows me the members of the band that are just itching to play, and they don't want to sit around. So. Which is interesting because, I mean, that's essentially what Chickenfoot was. It was,
Yeah.
Do something. Let's get out and do something. So next up, I think, is the most traditional sounding Sammy Hagar song, even though oddly enough, he didn't write it. It was written by a guy named John Eddy. The song is Loud. To me, this could have fit on any number of Sammy's albums.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it actually. I've written down classic Sammy Hagar song. Very poppy, very big anthem to the chorus. It sounds a little bit Def Leppard in the verse, I think, which is no bad thing as far as I'm concerned.
No,
And again, I like that mid-song change in tempo, which he does quite a bit. So yeah, I think it's good. Again, not that people think about doing singles anymore, but it would have made a good single in my mind.
Well, there is a video for it.
Oh, right. Okay. I'll have to check that out then. I've not seen that. So
it's also got a couple of, well-known people on it. I mean, it's got Michael Anthony, but it's also got Billy Duffy from the Cult on guitar.
Yeah.
And it's got Matt Sorum on drums. So there's some star power behind this one. But
yeah,
it's just a great Sammy Hagar rocker.
Yeah. No, I think it's great fun. It's really good.
So next up, I consider it kind of a throwaway. It's a live cover of the Beastie Boys' Fight for Your Right to Party, which was that really crying out to be redone? I mean, you're not going to better the original. I can understand how it might have been fun to be at the show when he did this, but he's got his tour manager, Paul Binder or Binder, calling himself Bling, doing a rap in it. And I don't know. To me, it's a B-side. It's a bonus track. To me, it's not an album cut per se, but here it is.
Well, I don't get it really. So in answer to the question, fight for your right to party. No, you don't need a fight for your right to party. You don't need to do it at all, Sammy. It's not. You don't need to do it on the album. If I'd seen him live and he played it live, it would have annoyed me. I saw Motley Crue last year, and they played this in the set, and you think why? In fact, I think they released it as a single fairly recently.
So you'd rather hear another actual song by the band?
Well, I want to hear a song by the band. Yeah, I don't, and it's not even as if it's a style that fits in and suits.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
You sometimes see bands do a cover of a song and go, "Oh, wow, that makes sense. It fits. The vocals are good, or the guitar. It just makes no sense. It's, I don't know, filler. Is my view. In fact, there's a couple of fillers on the album, and this is the first one. But I would have preferred it not to be on here. It annoys me, to be honest. I just don't get it. As you say, maybe it was fun to play, but guys in their 50s or whatever they were at that age playing a song that is about for kids who are supposed to be in their teens, it just doesn't make sense. It's just not right.
Yeah. And it's also it's interesting because you're right. Sometimes bands will do covers and you'll go, boy, I didn't know how that would come out, but that's actually quite good. This isn't one of them. This sounds like zero effort was put in, and it just kind of sits there.
I could see them doing it in a sound check or rehearsals just to get themselves warmed up.
I go that far and actually commit it to an album is unless they didn't have, there wasn't a great deal of songs. Although I will say this, around this time, and I wrote about this in the chapter on this book, Sammy put out a song that was called Open. And as far as I know, it was digital only. I did hear it on a rock station a couple of times. It came out earlier this year, 2008. That should have been on this album. It's never been on an album. And it's a perfectly good song. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was okay. I'd much rather have had that on here than.
When you did the research, I mean, I did wonder with this coming out, then them doing Chickenfoot, whether this was something he had to get an album out for contractual reasons, and it was kind of thrown together to stick it out. I just wondered if he couldn't do Chickenfoot unless he got out of the current deal he was in. I wondered, and therefore he threw this together.
Yeah, he might have signed a deal with Roadrunner, and then the Chickenfoot thing came up, and they just hadn't announced it. It's like, you got to get an album out, because of this 10-song album, you've got one song that had already appeared on, like I said, that Baghdad heavy metal. You've got two songs that were from a project that never was. You've got a Beastie Boys cover, and then later on, you've got a live version of a mashup of two Van Halen songs. So it's not, there aren't really a lot of legit new Hagar songs on here.
So yeah, it did cross my mind whether it was one of these contractual
it could have been recorded
obligations.
under a little bit of duress.
Yeah.
Next song, Switch on the Light, is kind of cool. It's got Billy Gibbons, not on guitar but on vocals, and it's unmistakably Billy Gibbons, and I like this one.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think the Billy Gibbons vocals elevates the song. I think if it didn't have that, it'd be a bit pedestrian, but I think it elevates it. Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah, I haven't really got much more to say than that, really. As you say, it's a decent song.
The next song, When the Sun Don't Shine, is kind of interesting because it's really the only song on this album that would have fit on Living It Up or Sammy Hagar and Friends or Red Voodoo. It's really the only song that.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact he should have called it Where the Sun Don't Shine as opposed to When the Sun Don't Shine, I think would have made it a bit more interesting as a song title. I quite like it, as I've already confessed. I like Living It Up, and you're right. This could have been on that album, so I quite like the song. It's out of place on this album, though. I think it would have fitted on that. It doesn't particularly fit in well here. But I like the bluesy feel on it. The kind of the bluesy country, isn't it? Sort of feel to it. And
do you think it might have been from a leftover?
I think it must have been.
He needed material for the album, so
yeah, it certainly would have fitted on that album. So yeah, I've got a feeling it, and it's just a Hagar written, isn't it? It's not co-written with anybody, so which makes me think, yeah, maybe it was left over.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the writing credits. There's 3 songs right in a row that are solely credited to Sammy, and the next one is the last of them, 24365 or 24365. When I saw this title, I thought this was going to be another one of those Red Voodoo, Living It Up type of songs. It's not. It's actually kind of a rocker. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's a bit of an anthem, isn't it? It reminded me a bit of Drive 55, that kind of sound to it. Again, a bit proto Chickenfoot. You could there's parts of it that you could see this would be on a Chickenfoot album. It's quite funky. Yeah, so yeah, again, I like it. I think it's one of the better songs. And actually, I'd always read it as 24365. It's only when you just said it could be 24
Well, I think the idea is 24 hours a day, 365 days.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It makes sense. How you look at it, it's just a random bunch of numbers. But
yeah, but I like the riff on it. I think the riff's really good. So yeah, so one of my favourites on the album, I have to say.
I think there's half a good album here.
Yeah.
I really do. And I kind of like the next one too. It's called I'm on a Roll. And this one was written with Sammy and someone named Nikki Oosterbein, who I've never heard of, but I think it's a pretty good song. It's a short song.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, again, it's quite typical Sammy Hagar, isn't it? As a sound. It's nothing special, but it's decent. But I do get the feeling that the last couple of tracks, it feels a bit like they're running out of steam on the album. Again, if it was me, I would have finished the album with the 24365 song, just to give it a lift at the end. So I think the sequencing's a bit odd, but it's a decent enough song. I quite like it.
So if this album was on vinyl, both side 1 and side 2 would close with what I'm going to call throwaway covers. It just so happens that, the last song on the album is a mashup of Dreams and Cabo Wabo. So, I mean, if you're talking about the source material, it's fantastic. But it's a live sort of acoustic. I mean, Sammy's doing a lot of talking to the audience. And I believe he's very sincere, his appreciation for his fans. I have to think there was a lack of material for this album, because why is it here? Why is it on here?
And I don't particularly like it, to be honest. I mean, I like the songs, but the version of it on here, it almost sounds like the sort of thing they might put on a B-side or something like that. Maybe if they'd just done a reasonable cover, live of the 2 songs, sort of segueing from one into the other. But I just don't like it particularly. It definitely feels like a bonus track. on an album that's only got 10 tracks in the first place.
It's a short, yeah, it's a
it's a
pretty
bit
short
odd.
album, and I
Yeah.
have to think that there was a lack of. I could be wrong, but I have to think that there was sort of a scramble for material.
Yeah, I think
Get
so.
enough to put an album out to, I mean, Roadrunner Records was a fairly successful label. I mean, they had Nickelback, and they
Yeah.
were a fairly successful label at this time. It's just interesting that that this album peaked at number 95, and like we've said, within months, here comes Chickenfoot, which actually that first Chickenfoot album actually went gold, which was I love that fact. I was
Yeah.
really really excited that happened, but this album just came and went, and it just and then when I look back at it now, to me, I had the same effect. Like when I look at that album cover, it's like, what is that? You know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
It's just there's a few good songs on it, but I just don't think that I don't think there needed to be a Sammy Hagar album at this particular time.
No, and it was odd for me because, as I say, I liked Living It Up, so I came into this with quite high expectation. I don't recall the album particularly, so I don't think I played it very often. And then Chickenfoot came out, and I have to say, until we spoke about me doing this show, I'd forgotten all about it, to be perfectly honest. But coming back to it now, I mean, you said earlier, there's probably half a good album in here, and I think you're right, there is. And the songs that are good are actually really good. So I'm definitely going to put a playlist together on Spotify, I think, combining some of the songs on here that sound like Chickenfoot with some of the Chickenfoot songs across the two albums plus the live one. I think that's going to be quite a decent playlist. So yeah, I'm going to do that. I think
the embryonic version of.
Yeah, well, I've got a playlist that's called Van Hagerfoot at the moment, so I'll have to give it a different title.
It's worth checking out. I mean, it's worth revisiting. There are some quality songs in here. I also remember, I'm pretty sure the one time when I found this album in a store is the only time I've ever seen it out there in the wild. I think you'd have to order it online now. So it really, I mean, Chickenfoot benefited from, there was that increased profile because you had Chad Smith and the Chili Peppers, you had Satriani, and then you essentially had half of a Van Halen lineup. It was a big deal. So they had a lot of, there was a big push on that, and it paid off. But it even further left this in the dust, like in the rearview mirror.
Well, and that Chickenfoot album, I mean, or Chickenfoot generally, you get the feeling they're having a load of fun, the four of them together.
Yes.
And it was a surprise. I mean, Satriani is not somebody you would have expected to be in a band like that and play the role he plays in that band as well. I thought he was fantastic the way he played for the songs, not played the sort of virtuoso guitars that he's got. And Chad Smith again, which I think he's a decent drummer, or in fact probably a very good drummer. But his drumming style is very different to the Chili Peppers. His drumming style really suits that kind of Chickenfoot style. So the four of them coming together, I think, was a shock, really, because when you read, I mean, I remember reading it about it when I heard the record, and I wasn't convinced. I thought it was going to be a car crash, but it's not. It works really well.
I was thinking, I usually have, when I hear tell of a side project or a super group being formed, my first reaction is usually to roll my eyes because, like, well, this won't last. There's nothing's going to come of this, but this did. It had its own sound. The four of these guys, it's different than a Sammy Hagar album. It doesn't sound like Van Halen. It has its own sound. These four guys created a sound. I'm really sad that they only managed the two albums, but you never know. There could be another one. But you're right.
The greatest hits with the live tracks is pretty good. I know quite a few of the live tracks are covers.
Another album of new songs would be. I guess they'd have to call it Chickenfoot 5, but yeah, I really like both the albums, particularly the debut one. And I agree. I think that Joe Satriani adapted much better to being part of a band than, say, Steve Vai did joining Whitesnake, because Steve Vai and Whitesnake was Steve Vai. I love Steve Vai. Don't get me wrong, but Joe's always like. You listen to Joe Satriani stuff, you listen to Steve Vai stuff, they're very different guitar players. Joe's always had more of that melodic sense, picking his spots where to go nuts. but you're right. He adapted very, very well to be basically playing simple meat and potatoes hard rock.
Yeah.
And Chad
And I
Smith's
think-
drumming
I
is
think-
really, really, really good on that. I'm not a Chili
Yeah.
Peppers fan. I always thought that I think of the guys in the Chili Peppers, I always thought Chad Smith was the most rock guy, and I guess I was
Yeah.
right about that.
Yeah. But I mean, the Three Quarters of Chickenfoot is the band that is out there touring at the moment, isn't it? So
Pretty much, it's the second
Yeah.
incarnation of it with Kenny
Yeah.
Aronoff. Yeah, yeah. So there you go, folks. That's 2008's Cosmic Universal Fashion. You would be forgiven for not knowing Sammy Hagar had an album out 2008 because, like we said, it came and went so quickly, and then it was eclipsed by the formation of Chickenfoot and the success they had. And but worth revisiting, and that's another reason. Again, only album on that one label. That's another reason why I wanted to assemble this book to let people know exactly what he did all these years. Never long gaps in between albums. Very, very prolific. So, so Parish of Rock, thank you very much for sitting in again.
No, it's been brilliant. Really enjoyed it.
Don't forget, you will catch him on the Contrarians, Grant's Rock Warehouse, Peter Kerr's Rock Daydream Nation. I've been on all those shows too. And we'll be sure to have Parish on again for a quote-unquote regular episode of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. In the meantime, folks, thanks for watching yet another edition of the Sammy Hagar Deep Dive. Go listen to Cosmic Universal Fashion if you can find